Hey everyone, welcome to Youth Bombs. I'm Craig.
And I'm Holden.
And we're the voice of young conservatives in Alachua County. Today we're going to be covering the topic of animal cruelty, which I very strongly oppose. Holden, I don't want to put words in your mouth. What is your stance on animal cruelty?
Yeah, I mean, from a moral perspective, I think animal cruelty is horrible. I condemn it utterly. So, yeah, that's where I stand on it. Now, from a law perspective is different, and that is if you have property rights in a society that respects property rights, if you own an animal, you should be able to experiment with that animal, and you should be able to do with your property as you so desire. That includes companies and individuals.
Mm-hmm. I would say the amount of pain that these beings can experience, there is no reason why it should be legal to unnecessarily torture, say, a dog. You might own the dog, but is it fair to be overly cruel to the dog just for the sake of it? I don't think that should be allowed. I think it's an intelligent, sentient being, and it should have the right, at least, to not be harmed by its owner.
I think, once again, I don't want people to go around torturing dogs. I love dogs. However, this is a different issue. It's the owner's property. That's a huge distinction. So the owner of a dog should be able to do with the dog whatever he so desires. As long as he's not telling that dog to go around killing people or something unnecessarily, then he should be able to do that. The role of the law is to protect property rights for individuals, life and property for individuals, so humans specifically. And that does not apply the same way for animals.
Though they're not humans, shouldn't they still have rights? Like, we're not talking about flies here, you know? Mm-hmm. And animals are our friends, you know. It's not acceptable. I don't think anyone would agree, like, yes, like, beat the animals, right, you know, attack them. Like, there should be a consequence for unnecessary cruelty to these intelligent life forms. Like, they're not human, but I still think that they have the right to not be put in harm's way by a cruel owner.
I mean, at the end of the day, I think a lot of these arguments boil down to property rights. We could use emotional arguments and say, hey, we shouldn't torture animals. And I don't think anybody should torture an animal. I certainly would never do that. But at the end of the day, it comes down to property rights. It's your property. You could do with it as you'd like. You can't own another human. That's slavery. You can own an animal. An animal is not a human. There's a huge distinction that needs to be made between humans and animals. And generally speaking, humans use animals to make their lives better in some way, generally for good, whether it's emotional support, entertainment, like polio vaccines. We did those on animals first before we did it on humans. Organ transplants. Several innovations have been made from experimenting on animals first. I even think Elon Musk said that he was putting the Neuralink chips into monkeys first. So if you take that away, then it's going to significantly hinder human progress and innovation. So I really think at the end of the day, law needs to be made in favor of human progress. Human flourishing is the North Star that we should strive for. And animals could help us get there. And they're amazing for a lot of things that humans are trying to do. So I think that when it comes to property rights, that should be protected for humans to do as they wish with animals.
Well, I think that we can look at, say, the fact that, yes, they're not humans, but they are intelligent. They do have the capability for intense pain that we shouldn't, by the nature of the act being violent, even though the person owns the animal, violence towards it is still wrong and should result in a legal consequence. Additionally, an animal cruelty law wouldn't necessarily say that we can't do research testing on a monkey or a rat, but it does mean that you can't just buy an animal and abuse it however you like for no reason, right? Just no scientific benefit. Just I'm going to beat up this animal or put it in harm's way, like with Michael Vick did all those years ago. That was unnecessary. Yeah. That doesn't further human progress. And I think if we allow for it to occur, unnecessary cruelty to animals, and say, like, yes, it is possible for someone to do this and not have a legal consequence, we lose a part of our humanity in that we're not respecting our empathy and ability to feel for others.
Yeah, I think that this is just an issue of the culture. I think that if we should use animals in a way that benefits us and not for the good of the self. And if you're torturing an animal for no good reason, I agree, it's wrong. We agree. If you lie to your wife, it's wrong. I don't think, however, there should be legislation against it, or a legal framework against it. There's a huge difference. I think, unfortunately, today we think if something is immoral, then it should be illegal, and I don't think that is the correct way of looking at it. I think even dogs were used for cardiac treatment, for treatments that were used on dogs to help humans. And I think, diabetes as well. Their diabetes treatments were used. So dogs even are used in experiments so that we can make it so that we develop things that make our lives better. And there are going to be a lot of dogs that die during that, and there's going to be a lot of things that go wrong. And so, does that mean we should stop that?
No, I think that, look, there's a place for specific ethics laws that do make sense in research, where we're allowing scientific progress to continue, that we're not placing human lives in danger first because the treatment is untested and new, and it does make sense to test on animals, but just no scientific purpose, just beating up an animal, there ought to be a legal consequence for that. And I think the other thing, to the point about lying to your wife, there is a distinction between acts of immorality and how big of an impact that has on society, the other person, as well as the ability for it to be policed, and what our rights are in relationship to the First Amendment and free speech. Violence, just punching another person or punching an animal, is not a right, but lying, as bad as it can be, is a protected right in the First Amendment.
Well, property rights would say you don't own another human, you can't punch the human. So that would, if you punch somebody else, then you have violated non-aggression. If something is your property, you should be able to hit this table as hard as you want. You should be able to destroy it. You should be able to shred it. And of course, there's a distinction between a table and a dog. But the thing is that from a moral perspective, there's a distinction. But from a law perspective, from a property rights perspective, they're both property. And so you can't compare a human, which you can't own because that's slavery, to a dog. Those are two different concepts.
Mm-hmm. They're certainly different, but you can have some of the same rules apply. Given that, we both agree that it is wrong to abuse an animal, I think it would be reasonable to say that, yes, while it's not a human, while it can't own things or produce things, that it should have a right to not be abused. That if a person is abusing that animal, they lose the animal, they get it taken away from them, because it's still a living, sentient being that is having its rights violated. I think just because you own something doesn't mean that you can do whatever you want to it. I can own a dog, but I can't throw it off the Empire State Building. That was unequivocally wrong.
You say wrong, and I think the words here are important. Wrong, I think there's no disagreement here. Wrong, disgusting, insane. I don't think there's any disagreement between anybody on this. It's just a matter of property rights eventually is what it comes down to at the end of the day when it comes to law. Law is to protect property rights in contracts. So how are you best going to do that? Well, you protect individuals, which are humans. And I think that's at the end of the day what this comes down to.
Okay. And why would you say, for instance, that humans should only have those rights? And what do you believe makes humans special? Because I believe, yes, humans are, of course, special, but just want to get your take on this.
I mean, the idea is we want to maximize human flourishing, not dog flourishing or chimpanzee flourishing or monkey flourishing or something. So if the idea is to advance human progress and flourishing, I think a legal framework to have that would be to protect individual rights of humans. And in order to have that, you need to respect property rights regardless. And so property rights include animals. Like there are chickens that have terrible environments, and we buy chicken from the grocery store. That probably includes that. And they are, stuck in these cages, like very small cages. They're all ramming into each other. They don't have a great life, but we use that to benefit human flourishing. So should we stop that? I don't think so. Of course, torturing your dog does not benefit human flourishing. I think everybody agrees there. It doesn't benefit human flourishing. But the law should protect property rights. And that's at the end of the day. It just comes down to property rights. I feel like every discussion we have, this is what I say.
I gotcha. Well, I think the thing that I'd like to close with is just the fact that if a person is abusing an animal, that makes them more likely to abuse another person. That's an indication that they're willing to do it. Well, and if you can stop that problem in the first place, if you can put the person in prison or give them some sort of consequence, then it makes it less likely that they'll do it to another person.
I agree that it's probably true. I don't know the data on it, that a human that is willing to torture a dog is probably going to be more likely to do crazy things in general that are not good as well. But I do think that is not a reason to make it illegal. For example, dropping out of high school, people who drop out of high school are going to be more likely to commit crimes, especially males. Males who drop out of high school are more likely to commit crimes than the average person. Does that mean we should throw them in jail?
No,
of course not.
But harm isn't being inflicted because the person might not commit crime, and many of them don't commit crime.
Right, and many. I mean, I don't know the data on it, so I can't say for sure. But the idea is that they haven't violated property rights or human life yet, and we shouldn't throw them in jail. Or that's essentially the framework I think should be from the law's perspective. Now, would I want to associate with somebody who tortures their dog? No, I would not associate with that person. I would stay away from them as much as possible. But of course, this is a different issue when it comes to property rights.
Gotcha. I think that given that violence is still being inflicted, that has to be taken into consideration. And yes, obviously, we both wouldn't want to associate with someone of that manner.
Right.
But that being said, thanks everyone so much for watching. We really appreciate it. We upload 3 times a week. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you have any questions for us, feel free to reach out at youthbombs@alatrorepublicans.com. Thanks so much, everyone.